our second learning and teaching interaction. I just want to get started right away with chapter 4. This was about designing effective instruction. And I felt like we read a lot of material this time, and so I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights from my outline. They talked about the component display theory, and one of the things that they mentioned was when you use print materials, you need to ask questions to aid reflection. And so I tried to follow this format in my Family 360 class when I created a Prezi presentation on family stress and coping. I was hoping that those questions, because it was a slide format, that those questions would help my viewers reflect on the things that I was teaching in that Prezi. Another thing they talked about in designing effective instruction was mixing elements. And I did this as an instructor at a regional music workshop here in Portland. I began the workshop without even saying anything. Everybody was busy talking in the audience, and I just immediately started, doing a hand clap pattern and singing a song that was everybody knew, like I belonged to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And immediately people put their stuff down and they start doing the same hand clap pattern, and it just immediately got everybody engaged and focused on what we were doing. And then I opened with an intro of the purpose of my class. It was a very effective way to begin the workshop. Merrill's first principles of instruction address several different ways that you could share your instruction with people. And one thing that he talked about was apply knowledge. And he talked about overlearning. And I've seen this in one of my loved ones' therapy classes for an addiction program. They have drills that they have to do every day, and this helps them set them up for success so that when temptation comes, that they've already overlearned the material. They've already overlearned the response of how do I get out of this situation, so that they don't give in to that temptation. And I just thought that that was really powerful, that we help our participants apply their knowledge through overlearning and practicing again and again so that it can be more applicable in their lives. Another thing, and actually that's going to take us to chapter 5. This is about engaging an audience. They talked about what changes people, and they gave us some theories of personality. And as I read about the conflict model, the consistency model, and fulfillment model, I wondered, how do we learn a participant's theory of personality? And I realized that we do this in our class through intake interviews. We learn their model of human functioning and tailor our teaching to their personalities. And I thought that was really profound, that this already in our class we're being given the opportunity to understand a person's theory of personality. They also talked about prelude to effective education and the concept of joining. And this lets the audience know that the FLE, the Family Life Educator, understands them. And I did this as an instructor at the music workshop that I previously mentioned. I introduced myself after beginning with the activity, and I shared the experiences that I had had as a primary chorister. I really wanted them to feel like I could relate to them, to some of their struggles and stresses, and that I had been in their shoes. And teaching the gospel readings, page 11 through 15 and 17 through 29, they talk about gospel learning. And most of us are very familiar with, the role of the Holy Ghost, the role of the student, and the role of the teacher. And I just wanted to share an example of a great teacher in our ward. He works with the youth, and this man loves these youth, and they are drawn to him because they know that he sincerely loves and appreciates each one of them. He doesn't put up with their garbage, but he's also very, he just has an excellent way of getting on their level. If they need correction, he can do it in a way that's not offensive to them, but also brings them back to the discussion. And he asks them in-depth questions that get them thinking, and also respects their responses. So that combination of love and respect is really powerful in the classroom, and it draws the students into his room each Sunday. They said that we should decide what we're going to teach, and in part of that, we need to master the content. And I found that this is really important when you're teaching people. I did this as a primary chorister. I made sure that I always had the songs memorized that I was going to teach those kids. Nothing's more frustrating for a kid than having a chorister standing there looking at her book, reading the song. They need you to be confident about what you're teaching, they need to see your face, and they need actions and movement or word things. They need just a variety of learning methods in order to learn. And I feel that really applies to family life education. In chapter 6, teaching methods, they talked about skill training. There were other things other methods that they discussed, but the one I wanted to focus on was skill training. I felt like BYU Idaho does a great job of getting us to practice the skills that we're learning, which is the purpose of our learning teaching interactions. And that's something that we need to try and incorporate in our family life education. There were other methods that they mentioned, and one I wanted to touch on was comic strips and cartoons. And I use these periodically in my Prezi for my Family 360, just to get, again, asking questions, comic strip, cartoon, pictures, just ways to present it in a variety of methods. In chapter 7, they talked about working with diverse audiences. And for me, I would need to be aware, especially of Hispanic and Asian cultural norms, as these are the most prominent in my area, aside from Caucasian. Under ethnicity and values, they talked about that some value individuals as the prominent unit in society. The church says that the family is the fundamental unit in society. And so I wondered, are those the same things? It made me think of my Psychology 201 class, where we are learning that we are an individualistic society here in the United States. We focus on independence. Most of Europe are collectivist societies, and they focus on interdependence. And I wondered, again, is one better than the other? So those are just some questions, some food for thought. I believe that to say that the individual is the prominent unit in society, it is partially true, but without families, those individuals wouldn't exist. So truly the family is the fundamental unit of society. And then lastly, teaching the gospel, pages 35 through 43. They talked about, well, I felt like a lot of what we read mirrored what we had read in our chapter reading. So I just want to talk about the point of calling students by name. This is really powerful. I always tried to know every child's name in primary, and we had over 100 kids in our primary. But it was so important because it made those kids feel accepted and loved, and I also felt like they participated better when I could look at them and say, John, I need you to come up here and help me lead this song, or hey, Christina, you need to be quiet, or whatever. They immediately, oh, my name. And they knew that I loved them because I took time to learn their names. Another thing they talked about in these readings was incorporating many senses. And it reminded me of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences, that people learn in many different ways. And we need to try and tap those when we are presenting our material. Thanks for listening to my broadcast. Hope you enjoyed it.